Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll give it about just a little minute to before we get started. We've still got some folks trickling in from the lobby. So we'll give it just a minute and then we'll dive on in. All right, I think everyone from the lobby has joined. So, hello, everyone, and welcome. We are genuinely thrilled to have you guys with us today. Whether you've been using MealSuite for years and years and years, or you just recently joined our little community, you guys are in the right place. My name is Tessa Stone, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I am joined by our lovely expert, Miss Heather Carey. And today we are going to introduce you to something many of you have probably been waiting for, the newly enhanced People Personal Menus. This is our latest upgrade to the People Profile experience. So this update is all about making the personalization easier and more intuitive. We have definitely kept all of the core functionality that you guys rely on a day-to-day basis, but we did redesign the layout to help you move faster and work smarter, help you tailor those menus with more precision and ease. So hopefully you guys will look forward to seeing that in a moment. Before we jump into the full demo, just a quick couple of housekeeping items for you guys, and I'll pop this in the chat here in a second too. Everyone's currently on mute, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. So please, at any point in time, drop your questions into the chat or the Q&A function, whichever one you guys like best in the meeting. I'll be keeping my eyes out for you, and Heather will be pausing to ask us for any questions that we have that we might bring up on the screen. So don't hesitate to let us know what those questions are. If for some reason we don't get to your question live and in person today, we will include all of the answers in our follow-up materials. So you will get your answer, I promise. And then you'll get a full recording of today's session and that Q&A doc probably within the next couple of days in your inbox. We are going to turn off our cameras when we start the walkthrough. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that little spiel before, but that way we can just have the screen up nice and big and see everything within the system. Now, last little bit before I turn it over to Heather so we get to the part you're more excited about. But I'm just going to pop up a poll question real quick because I'm curious about how you currently personalize resident menus. So just wondering if you use all of the options like adding personal menu items, adjusting portion sizes, or if you use more of the service notes, or if customizations really aren't your jam. So just curious to see how much y'all kind of live and breathe in this section of the system before we dive in. While y'all are answering that question, I just want to answer probably the question that's on everybody's mind because Heather's about to show us some really exciting things. So you're probably already wondering, when? When is it coming? So I just wanted to let you guys know that this is coming in August. The exact date will be hitting your inbox, so you will see that in your inbox as far as the exact date. We're still putting the polishing touches on a couple of things. We want to make sure it is beautiful for you guys. But we know that this is coming in August, so we wanted to show it to you as soon as we could. All right. Well, thank you to everybody who has submitted that poll. You guys are amazing. I see a lot of like, I use everything. So I think you're really going to like what Heather has to show us. So I will stop being so excited and chattering at you guys and turn it over to our guru herself, Miss Heather Carey. Take us away.
All right, Tessa, thanks. Just bear with me a second while I turn off my camera and get my screen shared. Ready? And I hope everybody can see my screen with no problems. And welcome, everybody. We're very, very excited to show you these changes today. As you can see, we're starting off with our people listing screen, and there really are no changes to this screen at all, but I just wanted to take a moment to highlight some recommendations we always make regarding your set columns and just to set some key columns here in the screen. So for instance, just viewing the service type and viewing, so the residence location, the dining area, the diet, the texture, the fluid, do they have any interventions or allergens? Those are key pieces of information. And if you did not look at the particular columns here or have them included in your view, the only way to see that information would be to click on the name of the resident and view the profile screen. So without or saving yourself a step, basically, you don't necessarily have to click on the resident's name to see some of that key information. And for those of you who may not be familiar or are newer, then you just click on the Set Columns button and you'll see what you're currently displaying against what's available for you. And this is really just a click and drag in the direction you need to go. So clicking and holding and dragging where I need to see it, or clicking and holding and dragging where I need to see it. And these little equal or gripper signs, you can click and hold and then drag things up and down. The order, top to bottom, is really the order left to right that you would see those columns on your screen. Should you make changes, then just remember to click that apply button so that you can then get that view. And on this screen, again, no changes to the filters, but when you expand the filters, you can then use that information to get groups of residents. So you might need to filter all the residents and find them on a specific texture or a specific fluid or a dining area. So you can click and select what you need to select and then click your apply button, and that would then generate a list of all the residents that meet that criteria. So nothing new there in terms of the enhancements that are coming, but we just wanted to refresh that information and just make sure that everybody is comfortable with that. Tessa, any questions so far on that bit of review before we dive into the actual residents?
Nope, not yet. I think we're ready to take a look.
Excellent. All righty. So we're going to start today by looking at a resident that I have assigned some customizations to with the new look and feel. Then we'll move to another resident and we'll walk through how you do each one of those and how you walk through those, defining that information on the profile. So I'm going to start with this resident here where I have actually already created some customizations for that resident. There are no changes to the main profile screen. So I'm going to go directly in the upper left-hand corner to that personal menu. So when the personal menu loads, you're going to start to see the view that looks more similar to what we see on our menus right now. So when it does load, you'll see the name of the resident in the upper left-hand corner, and you'll see the resident's diet, texture, fluid. If they have any interventions or allergens, that information can appear across the top of the screen. If you don't want to see that information, there is a button here where you can click to hide the diet order, and all it does is suppress or hide that information. Clicking on View Diet Order will allow you to see that information on the screen. And you might find that quite helpful when you're reviewing information on the screen. You'll notice that Thursday is highlighted, and anytime there's something special, like a special event menu or a resident's birthday, then you would see this in a slight orange color, and then hovering on the symbol will tell you what's going on with this. So in this case, for this day, I have a summer event menu scheduled. And so we'll see that, and that means the menu items are pulling from that special event menu as opposed to the scheduled standard menu. In a minute, you'll see another resident with a birthday, and you would see a little birthday cake symbol here, and hovering on the birthday cake symbol would then indicate that it is the resident's birthday. So the color doesn't necessarily mean today. The color just means that there's something special, either the birthday or the fact that a special event menu is scheduled. When this screen opens, it will open to the current week, and this is based on the start date of your menu and the number of weeks on your menu. So for my menu, this week is week 4. If I wanted to move to a different week, I can click on that arrow and choose a week to look for this resident and look at that information. Alternately, it knows I'm on week 4. I can just come over here and use this arrow, which will move me to week 1, or all the way over to the left on Monday, I can click on that arrow and go back to week 3. So different ways that you can maneuver through your menu. In the current version, we're used to or accustomed to these gray bars with the meals. We still have these little arrows where you can then collapse meals, and you can always scroll up and down, but if you want to collapse to get to say look at dinner, then you're able to do that, and then clicking on those arrows to expand the meal. So far, any questions, Tessa?
Nothing to bring up just yet.
Awesome. Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. All righty. So as I mentioned, I already, prior to this webinar, I did assign some customization. So I'm going to kind of point out some of those on this screen. Then we're going to move to a different resident and walk through the steps of assigning those. But when a resident is on thickened fluids, the system will look at the regular fluid on your menu and then reference within the recipe the fluid substitutes defined. So in this case, orange juice was on my menu for the regular diet, regular texture, but within the recipe for that orange juice, it recognized that the mildly thick would get a mildly thick version. That information is represented by this little blue bar that says fluid sub, and hovering on that little blue bar will tell you the fluid sub is 4. So anything liquid, typically at room temperature, your soups, your juices, your milks, and what have you, this would be applied, and you would see that action for people on the a thickened consistency. If I add something special to the profile, a personal item, you'll see here I've added the prunes to the residence profile, and I'll see that it has been added as a personal item. If I defined likes and dislikes, we're still currently today accustomed to the thumbs up and thumbs down. So we'll still see those symbols. And again, hovering on the symbol will tell you the dislike. And then hovering on the thumbs up will tell you the like. If I did a specific item substitute, so in other words, item A was on the menu, but the resident didn't care for it or didn't want it, and I elected to do a substitute, you can hover on specific sub, and it'll tell me that originally asparagus frittata is on my menu, but for this resident, we've elected to replace it with an omelet. So we see that information. If the item on the standard menu doesn't work, and if I have a scheduled also available menu, the system can pull from the also available menu. So I will start to see that information listed here. You'll see the little red circle. So hovering on the red circle will tell you why that item was removed. So in this case, I do have a diet intervention on the profile to not serve any pork products. So that the system removed that for me, and it shows that it had to pull from the also available menu. Scrolling down, I see more fluid subs, and then let's look at a different meal. So we'll maybe move to lunch. And as we start to go through, if something is removed for an allergen, you'll see this triangle. And again, hovering on the triangle, you'll see why that was removed. And continuing on down, if we see anything, one second to get down to dinner here, but then you'll sort of see the same thing. One thing I wanted to point out is portion size adjustment. So when you do a portion size adjustment, as you see here for my chicken Caesar wrap, the original portion for this person was half of a wrap, but this person has a portion size description, and hovering on the new portion size of 1 each shows that we set up a portion size adjustment of basically a double portion. So that just gives you a sampling of what you'll see on the menu. Another thing I wanted to point out here before we actually start doing some specifics, each item is a card. And so you'll see the grapes, the banana, the peaches. And if you hover on the card, you see the edit symbol. And this again is similar function to what we see on our menu. If I click on the edit function, then I can do some adjustments here. So if I were to select like, it's a like to those sliced peaches. If I didn't want that anymore, or maybe the resident changed their mind or it was an error, I can always remove that. I can do the same with a dislike. So the dislike would be defined, and then I could remove that if it was no longer appropriate. If the resident didn't really care for peaches and would rather have some applesauce or some pears, then I could go to the steps of adding a specific item substitute. And it would then bring me to this screen. And we do have some prompts on a lot of these screens now to kind of guide you to where you're wanting to go. But if I was looking for applesauce, just as we do today, you can search on a word. Now I could stop here and just click on the little search, or I could press my enter key and I would see anything with reference to applesauce, which means single portion items or bulk products that I've had to portion out. You do have a search filter on the right-hand side. So if I wanted to narrow it down to just recipes, then I might come here a step further and maybe say, I don't want the applesauce cups, so I can remove that. And I could use some of the other fields which you might be familiar with, maybe even narrowing it down to just a recipe box. So maybe my sides fruit, and then clicking on go would then return the items that match that criteria. So a much shorter list if I take a few seconds to use some of those filters from time to time. You could always have the eyeball symbol to search more information about that product. And if you wanted that, you could then use your plus sign. So we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And then the final option is do not serve. So perhaps the resident doesn't want peaches. We're not going to do a specific item substitute. We just want to remove the peaches altogether. You can do a do not serve, and it would do a do not serve to not every peach item in the system, but just this particular recipe. And if that was defined in error, then you can also remove that. And we do have a quick link to go view the recipe if you need to. So if you were curious about that recipe before doing any action on the resident's personal menu, you do have that link available to you. All right. I'm just going to touch on one more thing here, but it's your display options. So I talked, when we started this webinar, I talked about the importance of your service type and perhaps setting that column on the people listing screen. Depending on the service type for your resident, a little bit of the information on this screen is going to change. But here you'll start to see, again, information to help you. But when they're table select, then you'll see personal items displaying all available choices. And on this screen, you see the information there, but no reference to the also available unless the system couldn't serve an item, then it pulled in, and we saw that here with the sausage link. If you always wanted to see your also available items on this screen, you could add a check mark, and we'll just click on that save button for a moment. And what it would do is show within each category the items from your also available menu. So on my particular also available menu, my juice is coming from my standard menu, but anything with that also available designation within the juice category is now displaying. And then I could get to my fruit category and I could see those items, my cereal category, and I can see those items. So if you happen to be someone who likes to see that information within each category as you're navigating the screen, then that would be the setting for you. And if it was not something that you wanted to see necessarily all the time, then you can just remove that check mark for the include also available menu, and you can save those changes and it would just show the standard menu. But keep in mind, if it has to pull from the also available, you would see the item there and that the fact that it did pull. You can elect to include your snack menu. So when I was on this particular screen, you saw as I went down, I had breakfast and AM. That's because I have a check mark here. I am seeing portion size. We do recommend that so that you can guarantee or make sure that the portion size defined here is exactly what that resident needs. If you don't, then you just don't see that information here. But if the resident was half portions or double portions, then you're clearly able to see and make sure that this is suitable for the resident. On my screen, you'll see the strike through here for the sausage link and why it's a strike through. That's because I displayed the excluded items. If I had selected to hide the excluded items, I would have seen the scrambled egg from the also available, but I would not see the sausage. So sometimes you might see an item from the also available menu and wonder why the system did that. So using that option to display lets you know, oh, that's why they're getting the scrambled eggs because they couldn't have that sausage. I am electing to display by lookup name. And sometimes I think that's helpful. When I think of things like juices, you can have the concentrate, ready to serve, pre-portioned juices and what have you. So the recipe name can give you that level of detail versus the display name will not necessarily have that detail. So this can also help you QA and make sure the correct version is here. I'm electing to sort by category. If it's your choice, you could separate choice 1 and choice 2. Sometimes, and this is just a Heather thing, but if I wanted to say, look at my lunch meal and just have a quick see in my entrees for the week in terms of variety, then that's category might be a good view for you for that purpose, but maybe choices is better for you. And then all, meaning you want to see all categories. Anytime you make a change here, just always remember there is a scroll, an apply button at the bottom, so you will want to apply your changes, and you can edit this information at any time. Your settings on this screen, I should mention, because I've heard this comment from a few people in the past, but your settings on this screen in no way impact reports that you print in other areas of the system. It's really just how you're going to manage and view the information on this screen. And remember, I just mentioned about the message here. I'm just going to show you a couple of screenshots so you can know what to expect. But we already looked at what we would see for table select. If the resident was non-select, then it's going to show you that the person is non-select, and it will display just the menu items that are to be served for the resident. So if you had 2 entrees on your menu for a non-select, you would see the entree that they should be receiving on their menu. And finally, for advanced ordering, it'll tell you that with advanced ordering, you're going to see displaying all available choices. And then if you have touch advanced ordering and you are placing orders through touch advanced ordering, you can display all menu items regardless of whether the resident selected it on their order or not, or you can display just the items the resident ordered. So I just wanted to a little screenshot of what you can expect because there are minor changes and it's all dictated by that service type. So Tessa, before I move on, do we have any questions?
We do. I've actually been saving a couple for you. So if you noticed in the chat that I didn't answer you right away, I promise I was saving a couple. The first one that I want to bring up was kind of asked in a couple of different ways. The question is there a way to control what item from the also available menu is used as a fallback substitute? Another person kind of phrased it as like, can I pick the specific item?
Unfortunately, it's the order. When you build your also available menu, it's just really row 1, row 2, row 3. So if I had on my, let me just go ahead and display this, include it, and then we can display. So when I look at my breakfast menu and my fruit category, for example, if I were to go to menus and look at my also available menu, my banana half is in row 1 on the also available, peaches are row 2, and that's just the way they're going to list here on the screen. So you would sort within your actual menu itself in terms of what should be row 1, row 2, row 3. And the system, if really just goes on a pecking order. So if they can't have the grapes, then it goes to the banana. But if I have, say, a do not serve banana, then it would go down to peaches. If peaches work, it will stop there. If peaches don't work, it goes to pears. So it just keeps going down and down. So if the system were picking a choice, that is the order that it starts to look at. If you want the resident to get something specific, then I would be adding a personal item or doing a sub to say instead of X, serve Y. Does that help?
That's perfect, Heather. Thank you. The next question that I wanted to bring to you is specifically about do not serves. So when you are doing a do not serve, is there a way to essentially say like, don't do tomato soup all the time, but I do want tomato soup with a grilled cheese?
Yeah, so no, you can't. Basic short answer. So it's either an all or nothing thing when you do not serve to an item. So you almost would need to have a second recipe, and you use the second recipe, a version of tomato soup that is allowed on certain days but not others. That's the only way that could work. We could perhaps, or you could consider adding a request for an enhancement where you could define a do not serve for certain days or certain meals. And that's something we could definitely look at for future features in the system. But as of today, no.
I think one of the other things that we sometimes recommend is looking at, I dislike tomato soup just as a blanket soup, but if it's part of something else, maybe we can still serve it. So using that do not serve, we could never serve it. That dislike could maybe help inform some of those decision making if the person is on like a select menu type of situation.
Correct.
And then I had another one. Where did it go? Oh, there's so many good questions in here, friends. You guys are amazing. Um, so this was a point of clarification. The person said, does this mean we can remove substitutions from personal menus and add them to the also available menu and it'll pull?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Depending on what you've done on your profile. So if I did a specific item sub, then I could come in here and I could definitely get rid of that. And we'll get into customizations as well. So I could pick another item, or I could go to my manage customizations, find that item and just remove it. And then I could go edit my also available menu. Maybe I want that omelet on the also available menu. Definitely, you could do that.
Um, I think this has become a really great point in the chat. So I wanted to, in case anyone's not looking at the chat, some other team members have recommended that they sometimes use the like item note on the tomato soup to say, can have this with grilled cheese or, serve with tomato or to the grilled cheese, say serve with tomato soup. So using those item notes here in your personal menu could also really kind of help provide that extra level of clarity.
Yep, for sure. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is all of this information impacts production, which ultimately affects purchase orders. So the fact that I'm making an omelet instead of frittata means I produce less frittata, but do I have the ingredients in production, my recipes, and ultimately, so your larger, smaller portions, all of this will have a huge impact on other areas of the system as well.
Beautiful. All right. We've got a lot of other good questions in here that I want to make sure everybody gets answered. There's a couple that I'm definitely going to answer in the chat because they're a little bit more specific. So I think I will turn it back over to you for now, and I will get to typing, friends.
All righty. Thank you, Tessa. All
Thanks,
right.
Heather.
So we did look at a resident where I already had some things defined. So I thought I'd move into a different resident. And once we go into this new resident, then we're going to actually do some things together and walk through some of those changes and how you define them. So once the profile loads, I just wanted to highlight that, if you have the birth date correct on the profile, then it can highlight that day with your little cake here. So just some helpful things in case you want to do something special for that resident or maybe pop by and just wish them happy birthday. But it's helpful information. And there is a birthday report within People Reports as well that can help you with that. So let's start with a few customizations. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can use this Add New button. And then I also mentioned the little Edit button here for items. And I'm going to kind of cross compare a little bit. But if I were to do likes and I were to come in here for the bran flakes and do a like, it's only to bran flakes. It's not to all cold cereal. So any item here that I do those likes or those dislikes is for that single item. If I were to go to add new, I see like and dislike, but the difference here is that I can do it to a group of foods. So if the resident really likes hot cereal and they're not so keen on cold cereal, then I could choose the group. And you can always scroll through your group or you can use your search and then find the item you want. So if they like hot cereal, I could choose the group. If it applies to all meals, great. If I want it specific to a meal, I can select or deselect whatever I need. If I wanted to limit it to one or more categories, I can do that as well. And you will, again, all the way along, we have these prompts on the screen. And when you see these little blue eye symbols, then you can hover and get more information about that particular message. And then clicking your add button will then show the little thumbs up, not just to a single hot cereal, but to every hot cereal. I see my little thumbs up. It doesn't matter whether it's cream of rice or oatmeal or cream of wheat or whatever. It took everything in that group. The same thing would apply to my dislikes. So going this route, the add new is groups. So again, I could look for my cereal. So maybe if they're not so keen on cold cereal, then I could choose the group. I could choose my one or more meals if I want, and I can choose my one or more categories if I want, and then I can add that, and I would start to see the little thumbs down. And you'll notice with likes and dislikes, or especially dislikes, there's no strike through. So with a dislike, there is the possibility with non-select that the resident might get that item as a last resort. So if I don't have a scheduled also available menu and I only have cold cereal on my standard menu and I don't have anything else, the system will try to pull that item. So truly, if you don't want them to get it, if the resident really hates it, if the resident really doesn't tolerate it, then you may need to consider a do not serve versus a dislike. And if you're advanced ordering or table select, this helps your service staff because you approach and say, Mrs. Smith, I see you really like hot cereal more than cold. Today we have, and that can be used as a good service tool to personalize service for the residents. The next option would be your serving size adjustments. So choosing that option, I can choose the one or more meals. So maybe do lunch and dinner this time. And again, you have your information up here with your little eye symbol, and it will give you the information or explain that a little bit more. You can say which category or categories that you want this applied to, and you can adjust how much you want the portions adjusted. So here I'll do double serving. And if I add that, it's only for my lunch and my dinner meal, but what I'll see is all of my entrees. So let me just collapse because I only did lunch and dinner, but you see the original portion size in this case of the mushrooms, creamy stuffed, 7 ounces, but now they're getting 14 ounces. So I see the original portion and I see the new, and if I hover on the new, I'll see that I assigned that customization to the profile. If you're in the little box here, there is no ability to adjust portion sizes this way. So you can truly only do it through your add new button and your serving size adjustment. So I've just done the first 3. Tessa, do a quick pause before we carry on.
So I'm still getting caught up on some questions here. So let me scroll back here and see. I think this might be a okay. No, I think I need to finish reading through.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was typing fast and furious, everybody.
problem. We can carry on. Tessa will jump in. If I don't pause, she will jump in. So we're all good. So I'll just mention the fallback. So there is kind of a sequence and an order to what the system does. The system will always try and serve what's on your standard menu first, 100% of the time. And as we saw from our first resident we looked at, if the item on the standard menu was not appropriate for the resident, the system now looks at the also available menu. If the items on the also available menu don't work, the items on the standard menu didn't work, then and only then would the system use a fallback defined on the profile. If you don't have a scheduled also available menu, then it would just do the standard menu. And if they don't work, then it would go to the fallback. So it's just kind of a sequence about when this would be used. But to define a fallback, this is kind of a last resort, and you'll see that explanation at the top of the screen. But then I can start to look for that item that I want to add here. So if I was looking for something, I can just start to type in some words. And again, you can use your magnifying glass or press enter, but again, using your search. So when I think of cheese cheddar, I could have a pre-portioned package of cheese, I could have a salad plate, I could have lots of different things. So maybe I'm really looking for a sandwich. So narrowing it down to the recipe, and then because it's a sandwich, maybe going into just my sandwich entrees can then help me get further or closer to where I want to be. And then I can choose the item I want. So if I want this sandwich as the go-to item, then I can say what day or days of the week that I want that to happen. I can say what meal or meals I want that to be available for. I can say what category this would apply to. And by default, it's pulling the portion size from the recipe. If I want a note specific to that item, then I can type in that note and I can add it. And because it's a fallback on the profile, I won't see it pop in ever on this screen unless the system exhausted the standard menu in the entree category at lunch, then it exhausted the also available menu, assuming one was scheduled, and it couldn't choose that, then and only then would this grilled cheese sandwich show up here, and it would say it is the fallback substitute. Now we can add personal menu items. So personal menu items, I'm sure you're all familiar with those, but those are things residents need. So just we can have lipped plates, we can have prunes with breakfast, we can have lots of different things. But when I come in here, if I want to go to a personal item, then I can find the item I want. And again, I could just click this, or I can take advantage of those filters to try and find the item I want. And just clicking on the plus sign, I can say, well, what day or days do I want? What meal or meals do I want? What category should this be placed in? And again, the portion size from the recipe. And then I can say, because this is going in the fruit category of breakfast, should this be in addition to things that are on the menu? So in the background, I see grapes are on the menu. So should these prunes be in addition to or instead of? This prompt over here only appears if the resident has a service type of advanced ordering or table select, but you can select this item by default. So imagine for any of you who have touch advanced ordering and you are utilizing it, sometimes you'll pull up the resident to take their meal order and you might see items already selected for that meal, and that would be because of this prompt. And again, if you want a note specific to these prunes, and then you can add that item, and that item in my case would appear in that fruit category with the grapes, but this is designated as that personal item. And I just added that, but I still have this edit option within that box. So if I need to go back and adjust the portion, the days, the meals, what have you, I can change any of that information. If I edit anything, it will activate the save button. And I can also see when it was last updated for that person. And the final option here within the add new option is your do not serve. So when I use the do not serve, I can do it to categories or I can do it to preference groups. So the resident may not like bread ever. So maybe at lunch and dinner, no dinner rolls, no anything. I could choose the meal or meals and then choose the category or categories. And that basically wipes them off this screen because we're saying don't serve anything from that category. Alternately, you might use preference groups. Sorry, I skipped over this message and your little eye icon, but just to understand, do not serve will take it away. Often items are removed or taken away because the resident doesn't tolerate it. Maybe it's personal or religious reasons that they choose not to eat groups of foods, but for whatever reason, they may not be able to have it. So in my example here, maybe they just don't tolerate kernel corn very well. So they can have corn oil, cornmeal, corn pancakes, cornbread, but just have a corn cobbette or kernel corn. It's not very good item for them. So I can then choose that group and add. And so what the system will do is find anything on my menu affiliated with that group. And because my display options are set to display items that have been excluded, if I look at lunch and dinner, and if there is anything that affected by the corn, then I would see that with a strike through, and then the system starting to look for other things that the resident may have. So there's your corn cobbette, and you see the little circle. It's been removed because I put that do not serve. But then I see other options within that category. And just before I turn it back over to Tessa, we've added customizations, and clicking on manage, I can see those customizations. If I go back to the main profile, now what happens when the resident's diet order may change? So they've been on regular with a regular texture. What if we have to maybe move them to heart healthy? And I'll even go a step further and maybe I'm going to put them on easy to chew. So once I save that diet change, this is what happens with your customizations. You are prompted that those customizations are there. And do I want to carry that forward, basically? So I see all those customizations. If there's something I do not want to carry forward, then I can remove it by removing the check mark. If I don't want to carry them anything forward, then I can say don't, or I can click on that green button to carry those customizations forward. So now when I go to the personal menu for that resident, I will see the exact same prunes. I'll see my likes and my dislikes. And going to my customizations, I still see those same customizations. I have my copy past. Oh, that shouldn't have happened. Sorry. We'll figure out what's going on there. But you are able to go back and view and see your regular diet, and you would see your current diet order. So you would see that information, and we'll follow up on why my screen just did that. But you are able to copy forward. So when people change diet orders and do a quick save, just take that second to pause on your screen and make sure you carefully answer those questions appropriately so that on the new diet order, you're seeing what you expect to see. So before I go further, Tessa, is there anything we need to address?
Yes, thank you. I'm ready.
Okay.
You guys in the chat, I just have to, before I go to these questions, I have to say thank you so much. You guys are incredible. You are so interactive. I'm so grateful for you guys right now. Thank you again. Couple of questions that I wanted to bring to the table here. Heather, do you mind showing, just clicking on the manage customizations option to show how we can kind of see everything from that perspective? Wanted to just make sure to clarify that everything is still here from kind of that orange customizations button in the past. It's a little prettier, in my opinion. I might be biased. Uh, but you can see that snapshot, that like little summary of the likes, the dislikes, the serving adjustments, the portion sizes, and all of the good things there. And you have your filters that Heather just expanded here, where you can focus on specific customization types or specific days or specific meals. So that functionality all still there, all still easily accessible. Just again, I know I'm a little biased, a tiny bit prettier. Another question that popped up in the chat here that I wanted to bring to everybody is, will any of these changes cause changes to occur with like the people service reports in touch and so on? And I want to assure you guys that nothing is changing with the people service reports in touch at this time. We're focusing on enhancing your customizations within the core system. Those customizations still flow over into your reports in touch or your ordering in touch. So if you have a dislike to an item, it's still going to show in your ordering that that it is not something that they want or prefer. If you have a do not serve, it's still going to remove it from the options there. So those kinds of functionalities still flowing through to touch exactly the same. You won't see any visual changes in touch at this time that correlate to this though. Um, and then I think a couple of questions, both I see one in the Q&A and there's one in the chat as well, that are kind of around like best practices when we have an item that how did the original phrasing? So let's say that there's a food item that's prescribed that's not normally compliant for a specific diet and texture. And how do we go about putting it on the personal menu? When we kind of dug into this in the chat, we identified that the item gets put on the personal menu, but it was using that fluid subgrid or the extensions that were there already. Heather, from your experience, do you have some best practice tips that you might offer those team members?
Yeah, you might, I mean, you wouldn't want to necessarily edit that fluid subgrid. You might consider what you would do with that diet order to allow that item. The system is, I mean, we all are trying to ensure resident safety. So when we say don't serve it, we mean don't serve it. And those extensions that are assigned to items. And in some cases, when you're adding some, there are a few things that you could add and it'll say, you shouldn't do this, but you want to do it anyway. But in some cases, you might need to just play with the diet order to allow those items. And what I wouldn't do, but you could do, is have a second version of the item where you edit the extensions within that recipe itself and use that recipe for that resident or unique residents that have very unique requirements that aren't normal.
Yeah, if you were going to go that route, I would definitely say the naming convention of that unique recipe that doesn't
Yeah,
really follow your normal diet
right.
extensions might need
Yes,
to be super specific just so that that one doesn't accidentally get put on somebody else's personal menu or on
right.
your actual standard menu, right? So I think those are really great points. Another quick question that we have here is, if corn was removed, so I think that was one of the examples that you shared,
Mhm.
and there are two other options displayed, what would be the vegetarian option that the patient would get? Or vegetable or vegetarian? In the chat, let me know if I'm interpreting that correctly.
Yeah, it'd be whatever is on the residence menu. Sorry, look at the recipe for the corn
Vegetable.
vegetable. Yeah, sorry, my bad too. Me too. My words, I'm jumping
My brain
ahead.
immediately went to vegetarian. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
To our friend in the chat, thank you.
Aw. Yeah, so it looks what's on your menu, and then it'll strike through the vegetable they can't have, be it the corn or whatever. If the second vegetable on the menu is appropriate, that's what they'll be offered. If there is no second vegetable, or this isn't appropriate, now it's going to look at your also available menu to see if you have a vegetable. Ultimately, if there's nothing anywhere, it'll just tell you a sub needed. And so then you would have an option on the screen and it would say you can click here and define a substitute because that item or items don't work.
Perfect. Now, friends in the chat, I think I got to everybody's question. I tried to use the like quote thing in the Teams chat to make sure you knew that that was your question I was responding to. If I missed any, please take a second and let me know that I messed up and I did not answer your question.
Oh,
um, to our friend who just asked about, what do the tickets look like? We're not making any changes to the tray menu tickets or your tray card tickets at this moment. We do look forward to some enhancements there in the future, and we'll be sure to let you guys know in a similar format if those things do come to fruition or win, rather, because we're always trying to innovate. But right now, the trade card tickets, trade menu tickets, and so on are not changing with this particular enhancement that's coming out soon.
cool. And I just wanted to, before I move on to a different resident, just for a couple of other examples. Within the managed customizations, all the customizations are editable using your paper pencil symbol. And you just click on the paper pencil symbol and then you can adjust accordingly. If something is no longer relevant, so maybe they don't need the double portions of entrees, you can just use your red X to remove that customization and keep updated as needed for that resident. I'm just going to skip over to a different resident just to talk a couple of things. We won't be going through all of that again, but just to get into the information here. And when I go to that personal menu, on the profile that within the dining room prompt of the main profile screen, you can define a no meal. So the resident may be out for dialysis, or maybe they're out with family. So if you did have anything that was a no meal on your defined, then this is what it would look like. So there's nothing wrong with the system if you see no meal. Going back to the main profile screen, when you're in the dining area, you'll see this assigned by meal. So if the resident maybe goes out with family every Saturday, then you can define the no meal. And then on the personal menu, you just saw within each category no meal, that's what it means. So there's nothing wrong with the system. It just means we don't need to prepare food. We don't need to take care of that resident. They just aren't requiring any services from us for today. But this person is advanced ordering, so just going to their personal menu. As I mentioned, the display options talk about, as you saw in my PowerPoint, about what each service type would get. So the items displayed are the same. While we're not getting into anything touch related today, just a reminder when you're on your display options about displaying ordered or all items. Had I placed an order in touch for this resident, then the items that I had ordered would have a little green symbol in the box, and that green symbol would just indicate that that was something ordered in touch. So I just wanted to let you know where you could expect to see that information. And I'm just going to go to another resident. So when we go to another resident who's non-select, in non-select, you would just see on the personal menu the items they're receiving. So if I have 2 entrees on my menu, you won't see both on the personal menu. You'll see the entree there to get. So if you were printing tray menu tickets, the personal menu really represents what we'll print on those tray menu tickets. If you're working with a fluid menu, so you'll see this resident here on a full liquid. If I go into that resident and look at the personal menu, it would be pulling from my full liquid menu. So you'll see here in this case for full liquid, based on the scheduled liquid menu I have, you'll see those items that they would receive. And then if I have a resident, going down the list here a little bit, but a resident who's NPO, and I just go to that resident, I shouldn't see anything because they're not getting food, they're NPO. So your screen will just look like this. There's no categories, no menu items, but I wouldn't expect any because they are on an NPO diet order. And we see that diet order here at the top of the screen. So just kind of preparing you for what you can expect to see on some of those screens. And as Tessa mentioned, there are no changes to people reports at this time. What will be coming soon is just the navigation of that personal menu screen, as you can see on the people listing, there's really no change here. The reports, there's no change at this time. It is just where you customize and how you view that particular screen. So Tessa, I'll turn it back over to you for final whatevers.
Thank you, Heather. Um, and thank you again, everyone, so much in the chat. Y'all are beyond incredible. I don't think that there are enough words to say how much we appreciate you. And I appreciate you. There's been such fantastic commentary and great feedback, great ideas happening in this chat today. Y'all are absolutely incredible. So big thank you to Heather for walking us through this today. As you guys know, I'm going to hit you with one more poll. I always like to see at the end how we did. Please let us know your honest feedback. So you'll see one pop up here just asking you, when this comes out in August, how comfortable do you feel? Knowing that you've got this, you'll have this reference material to watch if you need to take a peek at it again. And I also want to assure you that, of course, we're going to put some things within the system. We're also going to give you guys some resource articles. There's going to be a lot of really additional materials that will come your way for anyone who may not feel very comfortable right now. We promise to always keep that great material coming towards you guys. Overall, I hope you guys are walking away with a bit of a clearer picture about how the personal menu enhancements can make your day-to-day life a little bit smoother, a little bit faster, a little bit more personalized for the people that you guys serve in your communities. And hopefully you feel comfort in the knowledge that it's the same powerful functionality. We're just trying to make it look better and feel a little bit easier to work through. As we said, your feedback really helps us shape the future of our training, our support, our system. So thank you again. I probably sound like a broken record, but thank you again for sharing all of your feedback, all of your thoughts. Keep an eye on your inbox. You will receive a full recording of today's session. You're going to receive a Q&A link in our resource center for all of the answers to your questions. I promise to comb back through and make sure I didn't miss any questions. And as I said, you'll see a few extra resources to help you guys hit the ground running when this comes out, which will be in August, and you will receive a notice in your inbox on the specific date that you'll see this live in your account in August. But thank you again, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to answer one more question in the chat real quick before we close out the session today. But thank you again for your time. Y'all take care and have a very wonderful day.